Thank you for staying with us. Tonight we turn our focus to a growing crisis that is hitting closer to home than many might expect. More than 80% of Nigerian farmers are defined as smallholder farmers because the size of their farmland is less than 5 hectares and they cultivate, process and eat directly from their farms. These smallholder farmers are also often the worst affected by flood disasters as they lose their primary source of income. In Ikorodu, which is a sub-hub of Lagos, relentless rainfall and rising flood waters have left farmland submerged, livelihoods destroyed and food security increasingly threatened. Farmers in the area are grappling with the devastating aftermath of what some are calling the worst flooding in recent memory. To speak more on this tonight is Olatoye Fajimi, President-elect, Lagos Catfish and Allied Farmers Association, Lagos chapter. And I also have Festus Majakojume and Obweze also joining us on the program. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Right, thank you very much. Let me start with you, Mr. Olatoye. I do apologize. I know it's not a good time for farmers now. How bad is it?
Well, it's quite bad. It's quite bad because overnight on Sunday, we had a heavy downpour, that started around maybe 7 p.m. on Sunday. And by 6 a.m., when farmers went back to the farm, we discovered that all our fish had escaped the ponds. The downpour was heavy. It was consistent throughout the night. It was something like we've not witnessed in the last 5 to 10 years. So nobody expected it. And of course, it happened during the midnight. So we were not there to safeguard the ponds. So we lost a lot of fish. Even poultry farmers had their pens who were flooded. People who were selling feed also had some of their shops, flooded with rainwater, which destroyed the fish, the poultry pens, and even the stores where products have been sold.
When it comes to rainy season, when it comes to flood, has the situation in Ikorodu ever been this bad?
Yes, around 2016. We had something like this around 2016 when it was quite heavy too. But that was a long time. And since then, we've been putting measures in place. The government have been helping to dredge canals around the area, but that has not been consistent.
I asked the question because, according to flood risk studies, Ikorodu is ranked within high flood risk zones across Lagos State. You live there and you do business there. From your own assessment, because I know of Majidu and I know of Berigbe, from your broader assessment, how vulnerable is that region compared to other parts of Lagos?
Yeah, it's quite vulnerable because we are bordered by massive water around the lagoon. So Ikorodu is generally quite vulnerable. But there are parts of Ikorodu where we don't usually experience floods like this. Other areas where they are really flood prone, farmers have been advised to move away from those areas. And they have moved, closer to the upland. But this time around, nobody was spared, because it was consistent, it was quite heavy. So, farmlands that never experienced flooding this time around had a lot of flood issues.
All right. Ambassador, let me come to you. Ambassador Obweze, I want you to talk to us about, the underlying causes of this frequent and worsening floods in Lagos, especially in areas like Ikorodu and Lekki. There are a lot of factors. We know about climate change, which is natural, but poor drainage and urban development. What is it for you?
Everyone, thank you so much for this time. For me, the challenges come from multiple sources. But like you said, let's go straight. The most identifiable challenge or causative factor for us that work in the waste and the environment space is the indiscriminate disposal of waste. Citizens' attitude.
Ambassador, are you there? All right, Mr. Majakojume, could you please go ahead with that response? I want you to talk to us about the underlying causes of this frequent and worsening floods in Lagos. Like I said, there are a lot of factors: climate change, which is natural, poor drainage and urban development. What is it for you?
Yes, well, as Ambassador rightly said, we're misusing our waste, just as he said, indiscriminate disposal of waste. The waste is not supposed to be thrown in the median. It's certainly not supposed to be thrown into the gutters because it blocks the gutters. However, having said that, the reality is climate change, which is global warming. Now, they say climate change is a natural process, but the way that it is happening now, the way that it is inducing this heavy, heavy rainfall, it is not very natural. It's because of the damage that we human beings globally, not just Nigerians, in fact, our own coming from Nigeria is less. It's the carbon pollution that we're pumping into the atmosphere that is making the earth hotter and it's evaporating more water. In fact, these days, sometimes when the rain falls, it's been classified not as a rainfall, not as a rainstorm, but a rain bomb, according to the Secretary General of the United Nations. However, having said that, when we know that so much rain is going to fall, and then we just dump our rubbish, dump our waste anyhow, it is totally unacceptable. It will cause all kind of problem, as we're seeing already in Lagos. Although the Lagos floods of the last couple of days ago were what can be described as flash floods. And the Commissioner for Environment, Wahab Somuhi, explained very well to Lagosians a couple of times on various media about this flash flood. It's one of the things we need to expect because Lagos is quite low lying. And when you have a high rise of the tides, that is the sea and the lagoon, they rise up for some hours or a day and then they go down. If this high rise coincides with one of these heavy rain bomb, then water will get trapped. But they're taking measures anyway, and it's encouraging to see. But the main thing is shine your eye on anybody that dares to drop a plastic or drop anything that just on the street like that, or especially into the gutter.
All right.
We can't allow that anymore.
All right, Mr. Majakodume, I don't know if the ambassador is back with us, but tonight we're not just looking at the impact of these floods on humans, but also on food security, which would, lead me to my next question. So let me stay with you, Mr. Majakodume. What does this flooding mean for Lagos State's broader food supply chain? Mr. Majakodume, did you get that?
Yes, I got that. Yeah.
All right.
The effect that it has on the Lagos food supply chain.
Yes.
Yes. This is it's disastrous on the food supply chain because it just wipes out, especially as we are deep into aquaculture, like your guests there, and it'll just wipe out those things. We need to adapt ourselves though, because it's a warning. The floods will go, in fact, they're going now, but they're going to come back probably this year, but definitely over the next year or two, we're going to see far more water, far more rain falling. We're going to get more floods. So we need to adapt. And there are measures that can be taken to protect especially the aquaculture, protect people who are doing their various little fish farms and so on. Luckily, the Ministry of Environment and Water Resources, they're very up to the task. I'm very, very impressed that in this dispensation, we have some people there who are really, really doing the right job, but they need far more support and they need to do it even more than what they're doing because we cannot afford to have our food systems impacted in this type of way.
All right, I'll come back to you, Mr. Majakodume. Let me come back to the studio. Mr. Lotoye, I'm sure you've been having conversations with members of your association. What has been the extent of damage to fish farms and infrastructure? Are we seeing total losses of stock or some partial damage?
Right now, we are experiencing close to 80 to 90% loss of fish from our ponds. It's quite devastating. I mean, you have farmers that have stocked as much as 5,000 pieces of fish, getting ready to sell in the next 2 weeks, and then it gets there, and out of 5,000, you only have about 500 left. So it's quite bad. It's quite bad. Farmers have lost their investment. They have lost potential profit, and of course, livelihood and employment will be lost.
All right. So, just like I asked Mr. Majakode, what does this mean for Lagos State's broader food supply chain?
Yeah, it's not a good story for the food supply chain because, recently we launched the 500 billion Produce for Lagos, and fish farmers were willing to key into it. But right now, the fish we are meant to supply are no longer in the ponds. And fish is about the cheapest source of protein, that animal protein, that's available, for Lagosians to consume. And all of this we were making consistently available. But right now, if the fish are lost to flood, that means there will be shortage of fish protein for the Lagosians to consume. So it's a major challenge, and of course, loss of livelihood.
All right. I'll come back to you. Let me get Ambassador Obweze's perspective here. What exactly is your overall assessment of this entire situation? And Lagos State says move out. Is that a solution you expected?
Not at all. I'm speaking most respectfully and most sincerely. Not at all. My expectation is that the government and the citizens should do more and must do more. The government on their part must necessarily and intentionally watch over, monitor, and ensure appropriate surveillance, especially for major canals, because it's like the people at the grassroots level particularly just don't want to do what is right. And the citizens generally have refused to act appropriately. And when our behavioral patterns frustrate the environment, we get what we see now showing on your screens is the result that we get. So the reaction ought to be on the part of the government, one, and on the part of the citizens. Behavioral change on the part of the citizens, because our attitudes towards our immediate environment, when citizens wait for rainfalls to dump their waste materials into gutters, into drainages and canals, what do you expect? Yes, it will definitely leave, the waste will immediately leave your immediate vicinity, but it will go and pile up down the road, and the result, we all suffer from it. Then the government on its own, I have noticed experientially over some years, the government deseals gutters and canals, they deseal them and leave the residue, possibly to dry before evacuation, but they end up leaving it for time beyond. At the end, another rainfall meets up with the desilted refuse, rubbishes and garbages, and they end up flowing back into the gutters and the canals. So the government must necessarily be intentional, not political, not business, not economical, but intentional, knowing that if they don't act with dispatch, if they don't act with dispatch and evacuate these drainages and gutters at regular intervals, the rains will meet up with them because the citizens have not behaved right. So to answer your question, I will say that the government really needs to do more in terms of surveillance, in terms of the silting. And when they do the silt, they must make sure that the waste is immediately evacuated. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Majakode, let me come to you. I'm sure you've been listening to my conversation with Mr. Olato. He's right here in the studio. He's a fish farmer. How do you think smallholder farmers who feed a large part of the population should cope with these repeated floods?
Oh, well, my heart just goes out to all of them, because we've done a bit of fish farming at our Lufasi Park as well. And it's quite intensive and it requires some funds and so on. There needs to be a definitive type of insurance scheme for the farmers to encourage them, because losses can and will come from time to time. But more importantly, we need to develop, as I said earlier, adaptation systems to protect them from this type of thing. Because even with the best of drainage, which has to be done, like Ambassador Phillips emphasized, it's essential. Government need to play their part and ensure that the drainage is done in a good, systematic way. And people need to be heavily enlightened about, removal of the waste, and also be, given the facilities for the waste. A lot of people do complain that the waste removal vehicles, they don't come in time and so on. But, despite all that, the fish farmers need to be encouraged with adaptation. There needs to be money deployed into helping them to develop their farms in such a way that when the floods come, because the floods will come back. This is the classic symptom of climate change, warming. And there are things that can be done to help them. Money needs to be deployed into that to encourage these people, because it's hard work, good money can be made. And as your guest in the studio rightly said, fish is some of the best protein food that you can possibly get. So they need to be supported to develop adaptation measures to protect them from floods that will come, no matter how good the drainage is. But as we said, we're seeing some very good moves with the Lagos State government, especially with the Ministry for Environment and Water Resources, to try to ameliorate flooding.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. Desmond Maja-Kodum, Environmentalist, Chairman, Lekki State Urban Forest and Animal Shelter Initiative, also Ambassador Weze Phillips, President, Lagos Waste Forum. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your perspective. Thank you. I appreciate it. Right. Now, let me come back to you. You heard him. He talked about adaptation. He talked about funding. But it's important to hear from the horse's mouth. If you could speak directly to those in power, what would you want them to know about what farmers like you are going through?
Yeah, well, we'd like them to know that right now it's not good. It's not a good time for farmers because of the loss of capital. So going forward, some of the things we are looking at is clearing of drainages in a more deliberate and consistent ways. We know where these canals and these channels are. So if there's a program to open them up, maybe quarterly, maybe twice a year, when it becomes consistent, the volume of blockage, or the level of blockage rather, will be minimized. And so when we have such heavy rainfall, it can take up as much water as possible. Then when we do proper appraisal for areas that really need evacuation, the farmers will need an alternative way of raising their fish. And that's where things like a collapsible pond and fish tanks will be relevant, making this available maybe in a subsidized way so that farmers can have alternative ways of running their business. There are also ways where we can use our cage culture, where we can build cages in the current earthen ponds that we are using, so that even when the flood water rises up, we still have the fish safe in the system, So those are some of the things we are looking at.
Right. So that's for government. But for you, the association, what is the association planning to take to protect its members and ensure the sustainability of fish farming in flood-prone areas?
So what we are doing is to appraise the situation. We are in the next 1 week, we are doing a surveillance to look at the areas and advise the farmers appropriately on measures that they can put in place to protect them from such occurrences from time to time. That's what we are doing. We are enlightening our members because they are in business to sustain their family and to also feed the society as a whole. So what we are doing is to enlighten them and to educate them on what they can do, to look at alternative ways of protecting, because what we were doing before was to raise the embankment. But we discovered that because of the pressure of the water, most of the sandbags that were built around the ponds were pushed away. So we had to look for stronger measures to ensure that the fish that we have in the pond are protected. So that's what we are doing for our members currently, enlightening them.
Is there a call for stronger collaboration between government, private sector, and association like yours?
Definitely, definitely. None can work in isolation. When we work in silos, each of us will just be, working against the wind. But when we collaborate, we synergize. Before now, Lagos State have been doing a lot, providing some input to farmers, educating farmers, but we need to do more. and it has to be consistent. Then because we have farmers association and cooperatives, we need to, the government and private sector needs to liaise with them because we are closer to the farmers. So when they liaise with the association and the cooperatives, we can reach down to the bottom of the pyramid where we have more people. That way, we are able to address the needs that are on ground and ensure that whatever inputs and support is made available gets down to the real farmers who can utilize them to improve their livelihood, especially the young ones and the women, because we have a lot of this age category and gender brackets among fish farmers around now. So we need to give them all the support, all the mentorship that is required to ensure that they succeed in business and that their production is sustainable.
All right, thank you so much for speaking with us, Mr. Fajimi. I appreciate you for coming all the way. And talking to us about the pain, the damage, and the losses members of your association have recorded as a result of this recent flood. Thank you so much, and I hope government does the needful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I've been speaking with Olatoye Fajimi, President-elect, Lagos Catfish and Allied Farmers Association, Lagos chapter. Thank you very much. And that marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at 12:30 a.m. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Good night, everyone.